Other than all the technology, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you? Kind of dog
I'm
days of summer, right? Oh, love it.
here now. See, the book's going to be backwards. Oh well.
That, that's okay.
At least I'm holding them up. I have two physical copies of your books.
Oh, pretty things. Great.
God, I love this book. Last night I was sitting here and I kind of went back through and we'll talk, but your prose and your observations about your characters are just so amazing. I just bow to your talent, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. And this one, my goodness, this was last year's, and you got all kinds of recognition for this one, right?
Good. Yes. Yes. I've. It's been very gratifying. So.
Lots of five-star reviews and a Goodreads finalist.
I won the Alex
And
Award from the American Library Association. It was a Book of the Month Lolly nominee. Yeah, Lolly Award nominee, and yeah, and also Mark Twain Prize finalist.
right, from Mark
Yeah,
Twain.
yeah.
Wow. So
So
that must feel great.
it's really good. It's very nice to have, some of these things. I've, been writing for a very long time, and I've had a lot of I've had a lot of success, and that's been really gratifying. But this was kind of a new some things I'd never gotten, never awards I'd never received before, and that's I'd never been Book of the Month before or anything like that. So
Right.
it's pretty fun.
Well, hey, you're not going to turn them down, right?
No, absolutely not.
All right, so let's go back a little bit for those who aren't familiar with you. And by the way, these are spoiler-free chats.
Okay.
And my whole purpose here is to sell your books.
Okay.
That's why I'm doing these chats, because I sat down one night and I said, well, I should just chat with authors because I'm retired and I have time. And if it results in 2 or 3 books getting sold, hey, it was a good day, right?
Exactly.
So plus I just love doing it. I love talking to all of you guys about your process and how you broke into, the publishing business and all the rest of it. So let's kind of do a little bit of your background for folks to get to know you, because
Okay.
we want to find new readers.
Okay.
Now, first of all and foremost, you're a Bay Area girl. Woo-hoo.
Yeah. Grew up near Stanford University in Atherton, which is a
I
very
was just going to ask you which part of
yeah,
the Bay,
yeah.
Atherton.
Peninsula.
Nice.
I'm a peninsula girl.
You're a Peninsula girl. And now, were you there your whole life until you, as you put it on your website, defected?
Yes, I grew up in Atherton, and then I went to Berkeley for college, and then I
Yeah.
lived in San Francisco right after that. So I really just stayed all around the Bay up until I met my future husband, and he was in film, and he decided to move to LA for his career, and I followed him and never left. So I'm still in California though. I'm still a California girl.
Right. Are you a football fan?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. So we don't have to do the Rams-Niners rivalry thing.
No, I'm the wrong person for that conversation. My
Okay.
son, he could talk to you about that, but I'm not. I'm not much. The only sport I really watch with any regularity is tennis.
Okay. And I don't know a thing about tennis.
Oh well.
I'm a Niner girl, so
Okay.
So then you went to Berkeley. Now, did you major in English or creative writing or something?
I did major in English. They did not have a creative writing program for undergrads when I was there, so it wasn't really an option. I did apply to a poetry program and got rejected.
Oh,
I was not a very good poet.
not my thing either. So, I couldn't begin. People have reached out to me on Facebook. Would you like to review my book of poetry? And I'm like, you don't want me doing that. I don't know. Think about it. Did you go on to a master's program of any sort?
I didn't, because I got swept up by the dot-com boom. I
Okay.
graduated from college, and the internet was just starting,
Yeah.
and there's all kinds of opportunities there. And I thought, oh, I'll go get a job, for a year or two, and then maybe apply to MFA programs. And instead, 10 years later, I was quitting my job to write fiction. Actually, I guess it was 8 years later. And I realized that I didn't really need, or I have the time to go get an MFA. So
Right.
I just decided to write fiction on my own, and I took a lot of workshops and a lot of classes. I did extension classes at UCLA, worked with some teachers, but otherwise just kind of felt it out on my own.
Well, obviously it's working out just fine. When you were a kid, were you a big reader? Were you like me, always at the library and
Yes.
talking to the librarian and shelving books
Yes.
for her and all that stuff?
I was the kid who marched into the school library every week and checked out the maximum number of books that they would allow. They would allow 7 books, and I would check out 7 books, and I would read them all before the end of the week,
Yeah.
and return them all and get more. So yeah, I was that kid. I was
Yeah.
obsessed with reading, and I actually volunteered at the library when I was in high school. That was my volunteer work that I did.
I did that in elementary and junior high. I was in there during recess shelving books. And before school and after school. Driving the library is crazy.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff did you enjoy as a kid? What kind of formative reading years did you have?
I mean, I loved Lois Duncan. I read all the Lois Duncan books. I read everything by Stephen King.
Okay.
I'm obsessed with Stephen King. I read a lot of Ayn Rand. Went through a big Ayn Rand phase for a while, The Fountainhead, and
Yeah.
kind of libertarian stuff. And what else? I mean, I loved mysteries. I would read all my parents' romance novels, my mom's Judith Krantz. But then I also was really into
Wait. Back up. Your mom is Judith Krantz, the romance
No,
novelist?
no, no, no. I read all my mom's Judith Krantz
Oh,
books. Oh God,
like,
no, that would be something, wouldn't it? No,
okay, you buried the lead on that
no,
one.
no. There's
Oh,
just
okay.
a shelf in our rec room full of Clan of the Cave Bear books,
Yeah.
and then the Judith Krantz books, and
Yep.
I would go read those. And then I also loved books like I read the whole Lord of the Rings, and I liked like
Ooh,
those kind of fantasy novels.
yeah.
So, and then of course, when I was in high school, I was in the AP English program. So I was reading all the literature. I was like reading the Russian literature, Anna Karenina, that kind of stuff. Classic American. So, I read everything. I read everything to put my hands on. So
Yeah. And so when you went to Berkeley, you knew you wanted to write.
I knew I wanted to write, yeah. And, I kind of had my eye on journalism
Uh-huh.
because I didn't think, oh, I could make a living when you're in college and you're thinking, what am I going to do when I graduate? Writing novels is, that's not going to make you any money. So I was like, oh, I'll be a journalist and I'll, work in journalism for a while and then maybe I'll get my MFA. That was my plan. And I did, in fact, work in journalism for 8 years. And but never got the MFA. So
Now, that's a big component of this book.
it is.
Tell folks what your experience was that then informed your ability to write it so beautifully in here.
Right. So I graduated college and got a job at Wired magazine in the mid 90s. And which it was just a couple years old at that point. They were just launching their kind of digital division where they launched the first online magazine called Hot Wired and a news organization called Wired News. And I was brought in to work on the digital side. And I wrote about technology. I was writing about, this brand new internet world and this kind of crazy things that were happening there. And so I was kind of very quickly became an internet expert and was on TV talking about the internet all the time and being an expert on NPR. And I really was kind of part of that early boom, those early years, formative years of the internet, and loved it and wrote about it and believed very strongly that it was so good and so wonderful.
Yeah.
And, this book, What Kind of Paradise, came out of me kind of looking back all these years later at those early years and how, utopian, the techno utopianism, techno optimism that we kind of had, that the technology is going to solve all of our problems and it's going to make the world a better place, and really kind of asking myself, well, God, what has happened in the intervening years? What were we wrong about? What were we right about? What were we wrong about? And
Right.
so this book really just kind of was me finally finding a way to write about that and all my kind of misgivings about what we created. My love for it. Obviously, I love technology. I'm here talking to you on Instagram,
Right.
but I've also deeply disturbed about some of the changes it's brought about in both personal dynamics and social dynamics
Sure.
and cultural and political, all these things that have kind of gone a little bit sideways because of the internet.
Now, with that expertise that you have, before we go back into the book, I do want to ask you, AI, are you as scared of it as many of us are?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm 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 definitely I use it, and my family is very conversant in it, and there are things that I find it very helpful for. But I also, yeah, I'm deeply concerned about what it's doing to creativity, and the way it's kind of sucking up all of the creativity of the world and creating generic versions of it and spitting it back at us. AI slop videos and AI written books and movies that are all AI. And I also worry about how it's taking away jobs. I really
Right.
worried about mass unemployment coming our way.
Yeah.
So what happens when we make the computer smarter than us? We all watched we all we all watched The Matrix. It's a little which came from the mid to late 90s, which was
Right.
when this book is set, and that was kind of like the early days when we were starting to think about AI and go, God, what are we doing? You know.
And reading this book just threw me right back into those times. And anybody that's old enough to remember those days like I am, I mean, I was just thrown right back. And San Francisco, of course, the whole Bay Area was the .com place.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
couldn't escape it. And it was exciting. I mean, I'm sold. I remember the discs coming for
Oh
AOL.
yeah, I do too. I remember them using them as coasters. They were very convenient for coasters. You always had a million of them sitting around because they just showed up in your mail all the time. Yeah.
Yes. And I had the AOL, and I remember I had the dial up, like, and I just remember being so excited that I could do legal research at home because they give us Westlaw passwords. I was in law school and I didn't have to drive to Sacramento from Lodi or from North Stockton. I guess we lived in part of when I was going to law school, 45 minutes. And instead I could, when the kids
Yeah.
were asleep.
Yeah.
Of course, I laugh thinking about how long I sat there now waiting for a case to print out on my dot matrix Epson printer, I'll have you know.
Oh, yes, we had one of those too.
I mean, we laugh, but our whole lives were changing. And
Yeah,
now
exactly.
look where we are. So, and you, like I said, you just capture it so beautifully in this book. Now, I was a little taken aback when I saw this classified as
Historical fiction.
I went,
I
what?
know. I know. I was like, what is this?
What in the
Historical
world?
fiction? I know. And all the people who are like historical fiction fans and are expecting some World War II novel or something set in like 1858, and they pick up my novel and it's about technology in the 90s. It's historical fiction. It made me
I
laugh so
know.
hard. I
I
know.
was kind of doing that too. I was like, huh? But at my age, you just have to roll with it. I read somewhere that your inspiration was you thought to yourself one day, what if Ted Kaczynski had a kid? Is that right?
Yeah, that was part of it. I mean, there was definitely a lot of elements that came into this book. But
Yeah.
I had been kind of, as I was thinking about this book, I'd been listening to a podcast called Project Unabomb, which which was about, kind of retold the story of the Unabomber. It was a very good podcast. Came out like 4 or 5 years ago, and kind of was realizing, God, I remember like if this was all happening, and he was kind of happening in parallel with the birth of the internet.
Yep.
And I was trying to imagine a person who is kind of torn between two worlds, like this new kind of technology world and then this kind of Thoreauian utopia out in the woods world. And obviously Ted Kaczynski living out in a cabin and writing these kind of anti-technology screeds seemed to kind of fit in that space,
Yeah.
and one day I kind of just had this I wonder what it would have been like to be like living if that was your dad. And the whole book kind of just spun out of that. So
And
yeah.
Esme, is that how we pronounce it?
Esme, yes, Esme.
Esme/Jane
Yes.
was born,
Yes.
and she's
Exactly.
the narrator.
Yes.
So this book, just so we can give people a brief overview, starts out in Montana, and you have this young girl, Esme,
Mm-hmm.
who's talking to whoever, we're not sure at that point, us, the readers, and she's talking about her life with her father in Montana, and they're off the grid. And she just has no clue what's going on in the real world. She's not growing up like other kids because they're isolated and, you know, they have to hide, and he has escape routes and all sorts of crazy stuff. But she's getting such a fabulous education because her father is brilliant.
Right.
And he's teaching her all sorts of, like, it's a classical education.
Yeah, exactly.
Philosophy and all sorts of stuff. And it goes from there. So I don't want to spoil anything. I'll let you finish the blurb.
Yeah, well, let's see. And so from there, basically, of course, she's a teenage girl. She's coming of age. She's starting to kind of itch to leave the cabin. And in order to do that, well, first she discovers something in the cabin that makes her realize that her father is not telling her everything about her past, and that her mother, who is always told, you know, who died when she was very young, is not the person that he told her she was. Or
Right.
long story short. And so basically the book becomes about her trying to leave the cabin and getting involved in some of her father's under nefarious activities in order to do so, and then kind of fleeing to San Francisco to find out what her true life story really was. And of course, she lands in San Francisco at the beginning of the internet era, and
Right.
it's kind of sucked into that.
And it's so amazing the way you write those scenes. My little heart was going, you know, pitter-pat for this girl because she lands in San Francisco. Now, just imagine, I mean, there is no other city like it on the planet. And she has no clue how to navigate around the city. And you're describing where she's going, which, of course, it's 90 minutes from my house. I know San Francisco a bit, you know, and I'm like, oh my God. Anybody that's been to the city reading that will just sympathize because she's a smart kid, but she's not street smart, and she certainly has never been out in the world to know how to work her way through this city. And then she finds some folks, and it goes from there. But yeah, it's a fascinating mystery too, in terms of who is she really, and what is her background, and what's going to happen if she figures it all out. What's she going to do with that information?
Right.
And then, of course, what's going to become of her father?
Right, exactly. That's
Yeah.
It's all about her. You know, and as I like to say, it's a coming of age story, but it's also about a father-daughter relationship, and you know, and what we do for the people that we love, and how we kind of break the cycles of family history and inheritance and things like that.
And in my opinion, reading it, it's a very strong meditation, if you will, on trust.
Yes, for sure.
And relationships, and, you know, how far can we go in believing what we're told, even by those closest to us? How much can we rely on? Which, for me, at least, reading this, and I read it last year, you know, when it was first coming out, that's a big issue these days in America.
Yeah.
The whole...
Yeah, who do we trust? And unfortunately, a lot of people trust the wrong people. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, we know what we're getting at.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's something that's very much on everyone's mind right now.
Right.
And so your book is very timely in that sense, as well as being a great look back for people younger than me, certainly, and younger than you, who didn't know what life was like in the 90s when all of this was first happening. It's a great glimpse to see, you know, what was happening and how people were reacting. And I mean, it was an exciting time. And that comes through your characters too. The people that she finds in San Francisco, I mean, they're hyped up and they believe in their mission. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry, that was quite a sneeze. Yeah, no, exactly. They're hyped up. I call them, you know, utopians, or, you know, techno optimists. But they believe. So sorry.
And that was the pre Elon Musk days.
Yes, exactly. In fact, although he was around back then, but he was not the Elon Musk that we know of now.
Right.
He was just a nerd with kind of some early websites. So.
I have a friend who worked for him in the early days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then my nephew worked at Tesla, so I've heard a few things. But
Oh wow.
yeah, this is more back in the Steve Jobs
Yeah, Steve Jobs era, really. Like
era.
it was, the '90s were really more about Jobs and
Wozniak,
kids. And
Steve.
Wozniak had already, he kind of exited the scene in the '80s.
Yeah,
But the early days was it's pre Zuckerberg, it was about
yeah,
Mark Andreessen, and who was the founder of Netscape, and the early days of Google. I think were around 2099, somewhere in there.
yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember when we started. I don't remember when we started Googling. I remember it being a big, exciting thing.
Mhm. It was late '90s or early 2000s. I think it might have been late '90s, like
Yeah,
99 or so.
because even in the early 90s, we still didn't have phones that did all the stuff they do now.
No, we didn't have phones till like mid 2000s, like 2000, and I want to say 2004 is when it started kind of being not so uncommon to see someone with a
Right.
smartphone.
But I had phones before that were cell phones, but you just called. That was it, basically.
Yeah.
And I remember having a Motorola Razor at some point, like in the early 2000-ish, and people going, "Oh, you got a Razor?" But I did. I mean, it was just a phone, basically. It wasn't until we started getting. I think wasn't it really iPhones where we started getting smartphones?
Yeah, iPhones. The iPhone was really the first smartphone, and
Yeah.
I think that was 2004. I want to say so.
Okay. Yeah, because I had a very early iPhone. Um, how long did it take you to write this book?
This one took me it was about 3 years between books. It was, 3 years between I'll Be You and What Kind of Paradise. And obviously I wasn't writing that the entire time. But I think I would say it took me about 2 years of solid writing.
Yeah. Did you have
That's,
to do much research?
yes, I had to do a ton of research.
Did you?
I mean, for me, there were kind of three different kinds of research I had to do. One, I had to do a lot of research into what it means to be a survivalist and live off the grid. I've never done that. How would you exist out in this kind of cabin in the woods? I had to do a lot of research into obviously extremism and the Ted Kaczynski kind of philosophies. I read a ton of Thoreau. I read a lot of philosophy. Boned up in philosophy. I had to do. I actually, even though I'd lived the '90s in San Francisco, the historical record was kind of thin, and so I had to do a lot of kind of digging into archives and trying to find stuff about the about the '90s in San Francisco and things that I vaguely remembered, but I had to get right. Um, you know, just writing about something in the '90s, you have to do a lot of research. Like I was trying, what was Bozeman like in the '90s? And
Yeah.
I spent time in Bozeman in like the late '90s, but you know, details like what was the library like? Things like that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the main. I had to do a lot of different kinds of research.
Yeah. I bet. And are you now? I have to ask, or I'm going to get in trouble with people who watch this later. Are you a plotter or a pantser, or are you somewhere in the middle?
I'm a pantser for the most part.
Are you?
I do some plotting, but I generally like my plots are very minimal, and then I just kind of feel it out as I go.
So you don't always know the ending when you start writing.
I generally know where I'm going with it, but I don't really have and then this is going to happen in the end. But I knew, well, I don't give anything away. So I knew with this book what the emotional ending was going to be and
Okay.
how the important relationships were going to conclude. I didn't quite know how I was going to get there.
Got it. Well, you got there beautifully. I mean, you had me completely up late reading because I had to know. How did you come to the decision to have this be her narration with
Mhm.
talking to somebody? Because it's a very effective way of telling the story. Was that so that you could get into her emotional
Yes.
core?
So there's a couple things that I was working on as I was writing about this. Obviously, you're writing from the point of view of a teenage girl. 17-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And there's a lack of self-awareness that the average 17-year-old girls have. And so I wanted to have her as the narrator be looking back at herself at that age with a little bit more awareness, both of what she was doing in her own actions and also the whole culture and the world that she was living in, right? Because obviously this is a cultural commentary in a lot of ways on the technology, the internet era. So doing that allowed me to kind of have a little more, give her a little bit more wisdom, a little more perspective. Also, it helped to keep the voice from being a YA book. Sometimes when you write from the point of view of a teenager, it can dangerously veer into YA.
Yeah.
And I didn't want this book to be that.
Right.
It's funny because the Alex Award that the American Library Association gave me was specifically for books that are written for adults that they think will appeal to teenagers. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I was hoping for. I wrote an adult book, but a teenager would also like it. So,
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. But there is one area where you go into another voice.
yes.
Now, what prompted that?
It's funny. Every book I've ever written, I've said, "Oh, I'm finally going to write this book from only one point of view." Because, every book I've ever written, I've had multiple points of view. And when I was working on this one, my plan was to write one, right? Yeah. I was only going to write one point of view. And then as I got further along, I realized that in order to really understand this whole part of the story of how she ended up in the cabin in the first place, we needed to hear another perspective from her past, and so it became increasingly obvious to me that the plot required it, the story required it. So I was like, okay, I'll write another POV.
Well, it worked.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it definitely enhances the understanding of what happened and why it happened, which is, of course, a big component of it. Now, we should tell folks this is available in paperback now. I have a hardback. But it is available in paperback. So if people have been holding off actually buying their own copy.
Yes, now's the time.
Go get it. Although I have to tell you, I logged on to Amazon and I found out that the hardback was actually going cheaper than the paperback. I think they're having a special.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it was just like, less than $1 difference, I think, or something. But, I said, oh, that's interesting because I wanted to check out, make sure I told folks the right information about it being available. And so if if you don't mind buying from the big evil Amazon giant, go check out and see if that's a special price, if it's still there. I can't attest to that. So we have to talk about this one. I have told so many people to go read this book. This is so unhinged. This was another one. You know how sometimes when you read a book, you remember where you were? Because I remember sitting on my love seat in my living room, like I just couldn't move until I heard this whole story. And this is multiple points of view. Where in the world did you get the idea for this? Because it is so crazy, but so good.
I was really fascinated by influencer culture. This book came out in 2000, so 2020, and so
right.
I've been watching kind of the rise of influencer culture in the late 90s. I mean, late 2000s, 2010s, I'd gotten really into Instagram at that point. And so I was kind of fascinated with people who were just putting their whole lives online. And then also kind of tracking like the wildness of like, I was also really interested in grifters. I've always been interested in grifters and con men and stuff. And so I was kind of imagining a con woman in the modern age, like where would she go to like figure out who to target? And, obviously the internet age, it's Instagram. It's where everyone's like putting their lives all out there just for everyone to see. And you can kind of learn so much. Certainly I think people are a little more cautious now, but in the late 2010s, like 2020 or so, 2018, people were just like letting everyone know everything about them, and you could like figure out a lot. And Kim Kardashian getting robbed because she flashed all her jewels on Instagram,
Right.
they figured out she was staying at a hotel in Paris, and boom, she got robbed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of where that all came from. And I've also always wanted to set a book at Tahoe, and that kind of started to come together that way.
Oh yeah, what a great setting. I was going to mention that, this house on the lake. And I mean, if you haven't been to Lake Tahoe, you got to go. It's just such a gorgeous area. But these characters and the way they weave in and out of each other's lives and the people that are also in their lives with them, not just the two main women, but the other folks. I mean, it is just so off the chain. I don't know how else to describe it. I tell people all the time, if you want a good thriller that will just keep you up at night, grab this one, because I was trying to figure out how you were going to wrap this all up. And as I said at the start, your observations and your prose about these two women and how they look at the world, and especially the influencer, is just so spot on. I was thinking about this last night. People are going crazy for yesteryear.
Mm-hmm.
This certainly isn't a trad wife story, no. But if you want to read another book about influencers
mm-hmm.
and narcissists, let's be real.
Yes.
This is the one.
It's funny because I'm also getting people talking about what kind of paradise is a good partnership to yesteryear, because it's about living off the grid. So yeah, I guess if you marry pretty things and What Kind of Paradise, you kind of get some yesteryear adjacent book. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe 6 degrees of yesteryear.
Yes, exactly.
All right, but you have 4 other books.
I do. I have.
So do you have them? Let's tell folks about the other one.
I have them here. Let's see. I think I have them all. Do I have them all?
Okay, good. Because I don't have those physically. I just have the 2 physical copies.
Yeah. Okay. So this was my first book. All We Ever Wanted Was Everything.
Okay.
That came out in 19. No. Good Lord. Where did this come out? This came out in 2002.
Wow.
No, 2004. Came out 2004.
4. Okay.
No, 2008. Came out 2008.
8. Okay.
This also takes place in the Bay Area. Kind of as a little bit Silicon Valley adjacent book about this kind of a dysfunctional family story about a family that falls apart when the husband's IPO for his pharmaceutical company goes public, and they become very, very rich, but he leaves his wife the same day. So that's my first book.
Now, let me ask you a question. Let me stop you.
Okay.
That's your first published book?
Yes.
Is that the first novel you actually wrote?
It's the first one I finished. I started a couple, but never got very far. That was the first one I really finished. So
okay.
So that's my first.
So we don't have any under the bed with Dust Bunny's old manuscripts?
Nope.
Okay.
This is my second novel. This is the hardback. The paperback has a different cover, but I couldn't find a copy. This is about a married couple in Los Angeles whose marriage falls apart when their mortgage balloons and they realize that they can't afford their house anymore. And it's kind of about the creative life of a young couple in Los Angeles. Also kind of domestic drama, lots of capers.
Yeah.
And then after that was Watch Me Disappear, which was my first book that kind of had a mystery quality to it. I think this is the first book that my editor read it, and she's like, "You've written a mystery." I'm like, "Oh, really?" So this is about a girl, a father and a daughter, who's a year after their wife/mother disappears on a hiking trip and is presumed dead, start to suspect that she may not be dead after all. And there's like a supernatural element, and then there's a memoir in it, and I liked this book a lot. This is fun to write.
Yeah.
That was one of my. I guess.
And that's a great cover too.
That's a great cover. This is the paperback cover. Yeah.
That's a great cover. Yeah.
Yeah, this book did very, very well. This book was my first New York Times bestseller.
Yes, I think that's when I first heard of you was Watch Me Disappear.
Yeah. People did. And then this one was the one between Pretty Things and What Kind of Paradise. Mm-hmm. This is what I call my cult novel. It's about twin sisters who were kind of child actresses in Hollywood. who as adults have gone in very different directions, and one's a hot mess of an alcoholic and the other one's, a domestic homemaker. But when the sister who's the homemaker disappears to a wellness retreat, a mysterious wellness retreat, the hot mess sister has to take care of her daughter and try and figure out what happened to her. And it's not good, obviously. So that's
Right.
all I do.
That's
Read
another
all
one
the
that will
books.
keep you reading late into the night. Just saying. Just
Yes.
saying. So
Yes.
that's great. So, and they're all available,
All available.
all in
Yep.
print.
Yep. All in print.
And I'm sure they're at all your local libraries too.
Yep.
And of course that counts. Checking them out from the library, that counts.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I love libraries. I check books
Yeah.
out from the library all the time. So.
Yeah. But it also helps authors because it lets companies know, yep, the books are moving and they're being requested and all
Oh,
that good stuff.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So people shouldn't think that if just because they're not buying books, it's not helping an author. Oh no, it still is. So
Yeah.
that's an important point. What is next? Are you working
I
on something? Because I'm
I am
dying to
working
hear.
on I am working on something. It's what I'm calling my tennis novel.
Ooh.
It takes place at a tennis academy and resort in the south of France, and it's basically about the world of sports, but really about family relationships and how far we go to like take care of the people that we love. And it's a little bit White Lotusy, I'd say. If you like the show White Lotus, so
Oh
there's
yeah.
that kind of vibe, like sexy south of France location and a big cast of characters and some bad things taking place.
Is there a title yet?
No, no
Okay.
title. I always title my books after I turn them in with my editor. Almost every time I come up with a title of my own, once I turn it into a publisher, they're like, "Yeah, no." Uh, what kind of paradise is supposed to be called Halcyon Days? And they were like, "Yeah, that's not a good title."
No, I think I like What Kind of Paradise.
Yeah. Too many people wouldn't know what Halcyon Days meant. So,
But this is another book with I mean, look at the cover.
yeah, I love the cover of
I
this.
mean, how could you not go buy that in the bookstore and stop and pick it up to read the synopsis?
I, I'm with you.
So whoever's doing your covers is doing a great job. I
Thank
could
you.
just say that.
Thank you.
When do you think that one might come out? Next year, maybe?
Um, Depends. I'm finishing it this fall. That's the plan. Usually it takes about a year for a book to come out, but also depending where you are in the year, sometimes they'll hold it into the following year.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah, it's a slow creeping business.
It's a close, slow creep of a project of an industry.
And that brings me to another question because you had your first book published in 2008. You're coming up on, 20, close to 20 years. You're right
Yeah.
about 18 years now. So you've been in this business for a while.
Yeah.
What, you probably could give me, a dissertation, but
On what's changed?
well, I want to hear what's changed and what you think, what the direction that the industry is going. Because I always ask authors who've been around for a bit, and I'm always fascinated by the answers about what
Yeah.
they've seen in their years in the business.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the industry's gotten a lot harder. It's a lot more of an, I mean, it always was an industry that was dominated by bestsellers, but now it feels like there's one strata of books that are just like, sucking up all the attention. Like right now it's Dungeon Crawler Carl and Romantasy and two or three books like Yesteryear and The Correspondent. And
Right.
then everything else is very like, even the big book clubs like Reese's Book Club and Jenna's Book Club, like they're not producing hits the way they used to.
Hmm.
Um, um, and so it's harder to kind of break through the noise, but at the same time, there's also this kind of this wonderful community on social media of book lovers who pass word around, and it give books longer lives, even if they're not necessarily sitting on the bestseller list. Like, there's more kind of word of mouth happening. There's more books that like just like I've seen the way my trajectory of my book sales used to be was like you hit again, this is me doing, you come out and you have a huge spike and come out, and then you kind of go like that,
Oh,
And with books lately, it's been more like you kind of come out and you have a little spike and then you kind of stay
oh,
here for a while. At least with my last book, what kind of paradise certainly was like that. And from what I've heard from other authors, it's been very similar. And that is all word of mouth. That's all like people, not necessarily looking at what's on the bestseller list, but
oh,
hearing from other people. Oh, my book club read will. I mean, I'm getting a ton of love from book clubs right now because it came out in paperback, and usually that's when books start to do well in book clubs. But yeah, I mean, my book has been picked up by a ton of just regular people in book clubs, not like Jenna, but
right.
and then people say, oh, what did your book club do last month? Oh, they read about Kind of Paradise. Wow, I should read that too. That's so that kind of thing. Or someone going on Instagram and being like, oh, my book club picked What Kind of Paradise, and they post pictures, and then that
Yeah.
it's like there's this trajectory of word of mouth, which I think is really gratifying, and I hope that continues. I mean, every trend burns itself out in publishing. I mean, a couple of years ago, every single person was reading Colleen Hoover book, and now that's
Yes.
not now it's romantasy. And I think that in another year, everyone's gonna be like, oh God, another person on a dragon having sex with a fairy, and like like give me something new. And I see whenever someone tags me on Instagram, I notice it, I read it.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. People will be like, I was so sick of reading romance novels, and I picked up this book, What Kind of Paradise? And I was like, wow. And it made me remember I love other kinds of books. I'm like, yes, like people get into too much of a rut with sometimes with like, oh, I'm reading this genre, and then they just read that genre to death. And then they're so excited to see something new. So I don't know. I feel like books like The Correspondent, or Yesteryear, the Theo of Golden, these books that are kind of breaking out are really unique, and I think that the more kind of unique stuff, I think people are maybe gravitating towards that a little bit more now. I'm hoping. I don't know, like unique but readable, unique but approachable.
Well, I think a lot of people are reading to escape more and more. I know I am.
That that is also
They got me to read fantasy this year. That's why I was laughing about the dragons and the fairies, because I just finished the second book in the Crescent City series, which I swore I would never read, but I thought, oh, come on, don't be an old fuddy-duddy. And I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, people enjoy them. There's a reason why they enjoy them, and they're very much escapist. And I think, the last decade that we've been in of the political turmoil and the COVID and the economy right now, and everyone wants to kind of escape a little bit. And I think that
Yeah.
heavy fiction sometimes doesn't give you that. I mean, I know that I have like a half dozen books going at any given time, and often it's the most dense literary novel that is the one that kind of gets slid sides to the bottom, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this great new Chris Bourgelian book. It's just so like page turner and well written, and then maybe I'll read
Oh, The Amateur.
yeah,
Fabulous.
I'm reading it right now. I'm loving it, and I'm
Oh,
reading
God, he's
that.
one of my favorite authors, and he's the nicest man.
Oh, he's lovely. He was lovely.
He's one of the few authors I've ever had the chance to meet in person, because nobody comes to Lodi. Hello. But, he actually came to Turlock, and I know you know where Turlock is.
I do know what Turlock is.
And I told my son, get in the car. And he was just so lovely. So, yeah, I
He
love
is
his book.
lovely. Yeah, and I love why he's such a versatile writer. Like he changes
Mhm.
things every book is different from the last.
The
Um,
Amateur is totally different.
totally different.
The
Yeah,
whole tone and the voice. I'm
yeah.
like, is this really Chris John? Wow.
It reminds me the most of The Flight Attendant of the books that he's written.
Yeah,
So
but
yeah,
even so, it's so good.
but still totally different.
Yeah.
Totally. So
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And what I mean, just as a reader, what I'm observing is how much publishers are counting on us.
yes,
When I was growing up, it was if you could make it till, the last part of the Tonight Show to see who the author was, right? Because I'm sold. I remember when it was a 90-minute show before they cut Johnny back to 60 minutes. And a lot of times you went to bed, you didn't wait for the author, or you got in the car, you either went to the bookstore or you went to the mall. and you cruised places like, Walden Books and all those ones that are gone that, we loved. And what's sitting right there when you first walk in, that's how we found out about books. Now, where do I hear about them? I get emails. I'm on Instagram. It's a whole different
Yeah.
means of communication, like you said.
There's publishers have no marketing budgets anymore. They're not paying for advertising unless, except for rare, rare occasions. And there's no hardly any book sections anymore, anywhere, magazines and newspapers. So truly the only place to find out about books now is social media, is word of mouth, which is why I think that it's been driving these massive hits that go.
How many times as a kid did you go to the grocery store or the drugstore? And while your mother was shopping, you went over to the book aisle. I did.
Yeah.
They used to have drugstores with books and magazines.
Yeah.
And in the grocery store, I can remember distinctly stopping and, I'll catch up with you, Mom, because they had the round things at the end with all the trade paperbacks.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
They're gone.
Trade paperbacks are kind of a relic of the past now. I mean, I had a trade paperback for Watch Me Disappear, and I don't think it didn't really do that much. And then ever since, we've kind of been like, there's kind of no point. So
yeah, well, I heard they're not even making them anymore.
Yeah,
but they were so readily accessible, and they were any store you walked in, practically you could find a book, and that's over.
Yeah.
And same thing with magazines. I mean, like you were there during the whole Go
Digital.
Digital.
The glory years when like Vogue was that big, and now it's like that.
Right, and Cosmo,
yeah.
We used to read all those. So it's a different world. You mentioned Chris Bohjalian. What else? Everybody always wants to know what authors are reading. What else have you read recently that you would recommend?
Okay, what have I read recently? I need to look at my Goodreads so I can remember. Hang on, let me do that. That's how I always remember what I've read.
I do too. I have the same thing.
I keep all my books there. Well, I'm reading The Amateur right now. I'm reading Country People by Daniel Mason.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that one.
That he wrote. Oh my gosh, why? Northwoods, which I loved. Such a good book. It was one of my favorite books of last year. I read A Guardian and a Thief recently. I read *𝑣𝒖𝒂𝒕 by Andrew Sean Greer when I was on vacation.
Did you?
That was a delight. He's such a wonderful writer. I love him. I also loved Isola by Allegra Goodman. I read that recently. And I feel like I'm forgetting some things that I read. I read Lady Tremaine. I liked that. I listened to that as an audio book.
Yep.
I'm blanking out on everything that I read. What did I read when I was on my vacation? I cannot remember. I brought 2 books with me and I read them both. Anyway, so I'm kind of mixing it up. Oh, I read In Memoriam by Alice Wynne, which is a historical novel. It takes place during World War I.
That's another one I'm not familiar with. I'll have to look it up.
It came out last year, I believe. Oh no, It came out 3 years ago. And I've kind of like to mix it up with I'll read contemporary fiction that's just come out, and then I'll throw in some backlist books. Like I'm reading the Buffalo Hunter, which won a bunch of awards last year.
Yep.
And I am reading, I'm trying to look at my stack. I just read the book Fatherland, which came out in like the 70s, but it's about kind of an alternate history where the Nazis won World War II. And it's kind of a detective novel set in this kind of in Berlin in 1964 in the aftermath of World War II. I've kept seeing it on lists of things like great thriller novels of all time. I was like, I should check that out. It was really quite good. So
sounds fascinating.
I have a lot of different kinds of stuff on my stack at any given time.
Wow, you do, and varied.
Varied. Yeah, I like to read a lot of different kinds of stuff.
I'm gonna have to check out that Fatherland book. I'm familiar with that, but one of my favorite series was The Man in the High Castle.
Yeah, it's kind of that
Yeah.
that ilk. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be something I might be interested in because I love reading about World War II.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite genres is historical fiction. And I'm kind of upset because I've heard from a lot of authors that publishers are kind of moving away from the World War II era historical fiction now. They feel like the market is saturated, and that breaks my heart because I'm sure there's still so many more stories that can be told and that we need to read.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, to remember it. And while we're on that topic, if you haven't watched the Tom Hanks series, it's so good.
I've heard it's great. Yeah. Yeah.
So good. And of course, he's a big proponent of keeping those stories alive. So, well, gosh, that's a lot of recommendations. So folks surely can find something to read, I'm sure, if they're listening to you. It's been great talking with you, Janelle.
You too. It was a pleasure. What a nice treat to like meet you in person after and Instagram, connections. So
I know. And like I said, I've been reading your books for a while, and this is the newest. And I'm telling you, I'm going to take this to my book club tomorrow.
Oh, good.
I'm going to recommend this one because this is the kind of thing that my friends, I think, would really enjoy because, we all grew up together. We're all the same age. And this would have that little touch of nostalgia plus a great story. We all remember the whole Ted Kaczynski thing, and I think it's so fascinating. This is another one I'm going to talk to my best friend and say, okay, Rob, you got to read this one. Because she's always asking me for recommendations. So
good.
Yeah.
Great. Well, anyway, it was lovely talking to you.
You too, and hopefully we can do it when your new book comes out.
Yes, fantastic. Stay tuned.
I'll hit you up.
Yes.
Great.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.